got a big planting out day today, and I'm just getting a couple of my beds prepped. These two beds along here housed my brassicas last year, or some of my brassicas. The rest are just in this long bed along this side here. And I've got lots of onions and shallots that I'm wanting to get out into these beds here, because I've never planted any alliums along here, and I have often problems with leaf miner and last year white rot as well, so I want to make sure that I start my alliums off with a completely fresh bed. So I'm just using my hurry knife to scrape along the sides of the soil, and it's actually a little bit harder because these are made for right-handed people and I'm left-handed, so I would normally use it like this. Actually, that doesn't work too bad, to be fair. Actually, that might be better. Or maybe it's just better because it's easier for me. So yeah, once all these seedlings are just removed from the top surface of the soil, I can give this a little bit of compost and get this planted up with some onions and some shallots. Most of these are cleavers seedlings, and a little bit of dock in here as well, a few thistles and a couple of dandelions. And just use the tool bit of the knife to prise out the deep-rooted weeds as well, like this dandelion. It makes it pretty easy with minimal soil disturbance. Loads of these creeping buttercup. I'm keeping on top of it this year though. The polytunnel is pretty full, and if you saw my last polytunnel tour video, you'll see that it's pretty chock-a-block in there. So I'm going to need to evict some plants today. Namely, the tomatoes are taking up quite a bit of space, and I've prepared a bed inside the greenhouse to do that with as well. I did that yesterday, and yesterday I also made another no-dig bed just by my bathtub. And that's really going to be for my tall vegetables and my tall flowers as well, to create a little bit more screening around my bathtub area in the summertime. So first of all, I laid down a really thick layer of cardboard, probably about 2 layers. I would have done 3 if it was straight onto grass or bare soil, but because I already had a layer of wood chip, 2 was plenty. I probably could have got away with 1, to be honest. Then I just banged on loads of compost. I think it was about 300 litres of compost. And that made up around 4 inches deep of soil. It's a really hot day today, so I'm just going to leave these seedlings out on the surface of the soil, and they'll be dry and crispy in about an hour's time, and then I can plant up my onions and my shallots. I've got loads of weeds down here, again mostly creeping buttercup, but there is a little bit of bindweed in here that's crept in through from my neighbour Fred's plot. So I'm just going to pull out as much of that as I can now, and then get this bed ready for planting. Oh, my robin's landed on top of the camera. You can probably see his little tail. I should probably go get the millworms for him. I think it's actually the girl. Yeah, it is the girl robin. Are you having a little break from your babies? Is he looking after them for you? I wonder where the boy is. I've not seen him all day. And I didn't see him much yesterday either, so I suspect they're taking care of their little brood. Come on then. Sometimes you like it like this, don't you? So nice. Come get another one. I want to do some gardening, so come on. She's so sweet. She's flown onto the tripod. I'm going to put these down somewhere and get on with this. there's a piece of wood down here. These creeping buttercups grow on runners, so sometimes you can get quite a big chunk of them out, which is quite good. And actually got that stinging nettle out as well. Thank you very much. All this bindweed just snaps off all of the roots. That's why it's so prolific, because it can grow from a tiny piece of root, and when you try and pull them up, they usually just snap off in the soil and then grows back. If I'm putting this on my compost heap, I'll make sure to dry it in the sun for a couple of days first, just to make sure that it's proper dead, because I don't want the roots to regrow. So it is a bit of a myth that you can't compost things like bramble roots or bindweed roots. You just have to make sure that they're really dead. So you can either soak them in a bucket of water for a while, and then you can actually use that liquid feed to water your plants, or you can just let them dry out in the sun for, well, until they're crispy, until they're definitely dead, and then you can chuck them in your compost pile. These are the roots. Look at them. If you're gentle enough, you can get out quite a big bit. Shit. That's my honeysuckle. Make sure I don't pull that out. See how the bindweed has got tangled around all of this honeysuckle. So just need to very carefully remove it. Just going to pull up as many of these bindweed roots as I can now that the soil's a little bit loosened. Look at them. I'm just clearing all of these weeds from around this hawthorn tree, and I've just found a couple of St George's mushrooms. Proper stoked on that. I'm sure there are way more, but I've probably massacred them with the rake, getting all of those cleavers and brambles out. But that's pretty cool. Keep an eye on that patch next year. Did I just break that bed? For fuck's sake, Danny. I'll be fine. Just needed to even this little patch out a bit. Give it a little fresh top up of compost. That's about right. That's those two beds sorted, and I'm just going to go inside the greenhouse now and go and fetch the onions and the shallots. So this bed in the greenhouse is all ready now for my tomatoes to go in. So I'm super stoked with that. And then along here, so in my last video I showed you all of these as well. These are all my brassicas, and down here are my onions. So that's what's going in those two beds today. Right, so that's all of the shallots planted out now. It's around 70 plants, and I've just got a few chamomile and lettuce to plant out. So chamomile is a really great companion plant for onions and shallots. It helps to bring over the pollinators and it helps to deter pests as well. So I'm going to be popping a few chamomile in each of the corners of the bed, and I'm also going to be planting some lettuce as well in the rows just in front where I can fit them in. So these shallots here I just planted in a grid pattern, and I did it about 5 or 6 inches both ways, and it should give them plenty of room to bulk up. These lettuces I'm just popping in between the rows, no particular spacing, just wherever I can find a little bit of room to pop them in. I'm also hoping that the onions deter the pigeons from picking out the lettuce as well. The smell should hopefully put them off. Right, so that's that bed planted up with some lettuce and some shallots. I've got one more here, can I pop that in anywhere? I'll put it down here. There you go. And now I'm going to put a few chamomile in as well, and this again is just going to be dotted around wherever I can find a bit of space, preferably at the edges of the bed. And this should be big enough now. I've actually got a little bit of parsley here, so I might even pop some of this in between. Right, that's that bed done. Right, so because I've got doubles of quite a few of my crops, I'm going to be doing a bit of an experiment and planting one half of them in bags and one half of them in the ground, just to see which does better. And I've got a feeling that the ones in the ground will do a bit better, but I do like a little experiment, so we'll have to wait and see. What I'm using here for the grow bags are actually 25-litre potato bags, and I've filled them up probably about 2/3 of the way full, so I reckon there's about 15 litres in each of these grow bags. And I've left a little bit of space in the bag, so as the plants start to get bigger I can give them a little bit more compost and mulch around the base a little bit, just to give them a little bit of extra feed. And what that does is just kind of saves on my compost at this time of year, because I am using quite a bit of compost through various different crops. So at this time of year I like to save a little bit where I can, and they don't really need that much when they're such young plants, so I can let them fill their roots up in this size, and then as they get bigger I can roll them up a little bit and fill up around up to their first set of leaves. So first up we've got Waltham butternut squash. So I'm just firming this in quite nicely. Here I've got a butternut honey nut squash, so this is quite a large one. I haven't got a stick for that one yet, so I'm just going to pop this on the side just so I remember which one it is. Mashed potato winter squash, so this is quite an interesting variety. I think it's a fairly new variety. The inside of it when you roast it is like mashed potato consistency, so you can just use it as like a potato substitute really. Uchiki curry. So this is the cool one. It's a climbing squash and it has really nice little purple kind of dark orange fruits on it, and they're quite good because they're sort of single size serving, so they're perfect for cooking up per person meals. Musc de Provence. I don't really remember what this one is, but I've got a feeling it's got a blue-grey tinge to it. I'll have to have a little look. This one is a delicata squash. Again, that's another quite big honey nut type squash, I think. We've got a sweet dumpling squash here, which I think is maybe like a white small pumpkin type squash. I really should take better note of what they are, but then again, that's also the beauty of growing in bags, so I can plant them up and then kind of decide where they need to go, whether they need a trellis or whether they need a bit of extra space. Marina di Chioggia. Well, that is all the bagged squash for now. This is actually where my tomato plants are going to be going, but since they are still in the polytunnel, they're probably going to be in there for another week or so. I have decided to keep my squash in here for safekeeping just until they get a little bit bigger, put on a couple more leaves. I'll probably get these planted out in the next week or so, or popped out in their final positions rather. All of the bags have got little holes underneath, so I'm going to rough up the soil on their final position and just allow the roots to settle down a little bit easier in there. But yeah, this is where these are going to live for the next week or so until that happens. I've got a couple final little jobs to do. I want to plant some calendula around in some of the veggie beds, and I think I might have a little tray of straw flowers as well that I'd like to get in the ground, so we'll do that now and then I'm going to head home. Still quite a mess in here on the floor, but it's not too bad. It's really nice to see some greenery in here now. But let's go and find the calendula and get those in the veggie beds. So just got a little tray here, and I'm going to be popping these just in edges of all of the veggie beds. So as I said, I'm just going to be dotting these calendula in the fronts of my veggie beds. No rhyme or reason to it, just wherever I've got a little bit of space and wherever I think that they'll look nice. Pop one just in one of my flower beds. While I'm down here, I'll tell you something really cool about forget-me-nots. You can actually tell when a bee or an insect has come to visit the flowers because their middles change from a lovely bright yellow to a white colour, and that indicates to the insects that that flower's already been visited and not to bother. It's a pretty cool little trick that these forget-me-nots have got. So like you can see how this one is quite bright. That one's probably been visited once already, and this one has had all of its pollen used up. So it's quite a cool little way of being able to tell whether that flower's been pollinated or not. So I'm just going to be popping the last one in my herb spiral here so I don't get stung by nettles. I'm pretty sure I've already got calendula in this little herb spiral. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've got a couple of cool little varieties, but it never hurts to add more in. Fuck, why do I always get stung? I was so careful when I still got stung. No dock around. Oh, I need to go and get some dock because that really stung. So when you're using dock for stings, the best bits to get are these little young shoots, because underneath that sheath here, you'll find a really sticky kind of gel, almost like an aloe vera gel. I don't know if the camera's going to pick up the viscosity of this, but yeah, it's kind of like a gel, and you use that instead of the crushed leaves, which is the most common cited thing to use for stings. Right, well that's me done for the evening. I'm going to get home because my neighbour gave me a massive load of rhubarb. So I think I'm going to spend the evening baking that up into various sweet treats. So yeah, I'm going to head home.